All right. So then let's use a metaphor, because it's so helpful. You know, we use metaphors, stories, illustrations, allegories. Christ used parables, you know, teaching stories. We use stories to try to understand what can't really be spoken about. So here's a metaphor, and it's one that's been used continually for thousands of years. And that is, well, let's use the song. Let's use the teaching song. Do you remember the song? Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 merrily. What's the rest of it? Life is but a dream. Life is but a dream. Now that's a metaphor that's been given to us in almost all the traditions I've studied for thousands of years. Life is a dream. It's not meant to say that it's not real to us. It's meant for us to understand the relationship between the individual and the whole. Let's see if we can understand that. Let's make up a dream together. So let's start the dream. Help me make this up. We're going to start the dream in a big city, downtown. We're going to be walking on the sidewalk with huge skyscrapers. And then what should happen next?
We run into somebody.
And then we run into somebody. Is it somebody we like?
We don't know them.
We don't know them. So we literally run into them?
No.
Oh, just we run into them.
We make contact.
We make contact with somebody, and then what happens? We have a conversation, right? And then what happens?
Make a judgment about it.
And then we have a judgment about that conversation. And then there's a car accident right to the side, and suddenly the judgment is out of our mind, and we're thinking about the car accident. And then a bird swoops in and poops on the car accident. I mean, this is just so silly. These are dreams, right? Right? And then suddenly the bird turns into a dragon. And the dragon scares everybody off the street. And we run to one of the skyscrapers, and we break through, we open the door to run through, and we run out into a mountain scene. And it's total nature, and nobody is there, and it's beautiful, and there's trees, and it's kind of like the Sound of Music, you know, kind of scene. Then we wake up. Sound like a dream you've had recently? So, what is this dream made of? Thought, or more particularly, consciousness. Do you understand? Like your dream is made out of consciousness, your consciousness. And everything in the dream is made of your consciousness.
How is consciousness different than thought?
I would say that thought is a manifestation of consciousness, but it's not the only manifestation. We're conscious when we're thought-free. Pure awareness has no thought, but it's an expression of consciousness.
So it'd be like consciousness is in the big circle. And then
Sure, supreme consciousness. That's right. That's right. So the skyscrapers, were the skyscrapers real? I mean, when you woke up, were the skyscrapers right there in your room with you? No. So they were made of consciousness. Was the person you bumped into, were they in the bedroom when you woke up? No. So they're made of consciousness. The car accident, made of the bird poop, made of consciousness. The bird that turned into a dragon, the blue sky that the dragon flew off into, made of consciousness. Everything in the dream. The transition from the city onto the mountain scene, the mountain itself, the beauty, the blue sky that opens up to, Julie Andrews that you were dancing with there, and all of that made up, it was all made up of consciousness. Can you see that? Now here's the question. This is a question I'd like you to take home with you. We're going to play with it tonight, but I want you to take it home and chew on it. So you were in the dream, wandering around, having your experiences, what is the you in the dream's relationship with the dreamer? Or to make it less complicated, what is the dragon's relationship to the dreamer? What is the skyscraper's relationship to the dreamer? What is the bird? What is the mountain's relationship to the dreamer? Do you understand this question? The dreamer is the source of that character, isn't it? The source and sustainer of that character. Because when the dreaming consciousness decides to make a change, it immediately changes from city to mountain. With no problem at all. Just simply flips it into a whole different experience. Everything in the dream has a relationship to the dreamer. The dreamer is the character's source and true self. If you track anything in the dream back to its origin, you're going to get back to the dreamer. Is this making sense? So if the dream stretched out, the you in the dream, or the dragon in the dream, or the skyscraper in the dream, could begin to develop a sense of connection, if it wanted to, if it felt the longing for it, if it found out how, it could begin to feel its connection to the dreamer. Now, here's another one of those questions. Where in the dream is the dreamer located? So if we were in the dream to find out, hey, there is a supreme dreamer, and to find that dreamer is to experience love and bliss and freedom, where is the character in the dream going to go?
Awareness.
Where?
Awareness.
It's going to go to awareness. But probably at first it's not going to do that.
Observer.
It may, first of all, go try to look for it in a church, or in a building, or in a teacher, or in something outside of itself, because that's typically how we do it. And as we continue to grow, as the character in the dream, we'll finally come to that conclusion. Do you see why Christ said, you have to find this within yourself? If the character in the dream keeps looking for the dreamer out there, will he or she ever find the dreamer? Never. Because the dreamer isn't a thing in the dream. It's everything in the dream. The dreamer isn't a thing in the dream. It is the source and substance of everything in the dream. So now this dream character might collect a few kind of other followers and say, hey, I think we're going to find the dreamer. Because we've been told that means, freedom and love and power and so forth. We're going to find it. So we group together with like-minded people. And does that grouping together with like-minded people and becoming an us versus a them, we are on the right track and everybody else is on the wrong track, is that going to be conducive to them finding the consciousness of the dreamer? Absolutely not. In fact, it's going to be a total distraction. The only way to find the dreamer is to begin to embrace all things. Because all things are expressions of that one dreaming consciousness. So the character has to learn, in the dream, has to learn that they have to begin to turn inward. They have to track back to their own source, their own origin. And ultimately, with time and practice, they become lucid. You know what it is to be lucid in a dream? To become lucid in the dream is to know you're in the dream, but know you're the dreamer. That's what it means to be lucid. And this is a very cool thing, and evidently, I haven't learned how to do this, but evidently you can learn to do this, to become lucid in your dream. And those that have learned to become lucid in their own dreams find it to be a very cool thing, because there's nothing you can't do. You want to fly? Fly. And the experience is very real, like all dream experiences are. You want to become an elephant? Be an elephant. Because you're the dreamer in your own dream, and you know that. And that's what enlightenment is. That's what a liberated soul is. They're liberated from the sense of being a separate dream character. And they come into the understanding they are the dreamer. And they're lucid as that one consciousness in the dream of separation. And people that achieve that, their only desire is to help others wake up. Our relationship to that, to Source, to God, to Spirit, is the same thing as the dream character's relationship to the dreamer. You and I right here, right now, are living the dream. We're in the divine dreamer's dream. In Tantra Yoga, the divine dreamer is thought to be the mother, the creative force of consciousness, Shakti. So that this whole dream is being dreamed by the Divine Mother. And you and I find ourselves here tonight in the dream, interacting, having these interesting conversations, or maybe not so interesting to some, you know. And the question is, can we begin to create a relationship to the Divine Dreamer? And begin to explore that relationship to the point where the boundary between us and that begins to blur. And we begin to get glimpses of ourselves as the Divine Dreamer, as that divine consciousness. That's what our spiritual practices are all about. Yes, please.
So the whole dream thing sounded really cool to me until you had us, our experiences, sounding as if they're a manifestation of Supreme Consciousness dreaming. Now I feel a little puppetish.
A little what?
Puppetish. Puppetish.
Puppetish. Yes, yes, because you identify yourself as the character and not the dreamer. So of course I'm going to feel like the puppet as long as I think I'm the character.
But if my life so when I have a dream and the characters in the dream are doing their thing,
Yes.
poops on, all those kinds of things are happening.
Yes,
Those are coming from my consciousness.
yes,
I'm the dreamer.
yes,
And those characters in the dream have no volition to do anything other than what I'm directing that dream to play out.
yep,
So if I am now a character in someone else's dream, then there's...
I totally understand. Again, the issue is that of identification. Your question was, if I am something in somebody else's dream. Do you see, this is illusion that we have as human beings about separation. I'm identified with this, not as this. So I, Scott, am in somebody else's dream, and they get to do with me whatever the hell they want to. There's nothing fair about that. I'm not a puppet. This has been a conversation that human beings have had for, in theology, it's just been throughout Christian theology for 2,000 years.
You call it fatalism.
Yep. Well, there's all kinds of names, all kinds of isms that have built up around our thoughts and philosophies. But the problem is they're all rooted in the idea that God is out there somewhere and I'm over here somewhere. And I've got to figure out how to appease God, to come into right relationship with God, to be coaxed back into good standing with God. How do I do that? Child sacrifices or blood sacrifices, or, how do we get back into those graces? And this metaphor says, no, God isn't out there somewhere. God is right here. God is expressing as norm. And the direction you are heading is the realization of that. Where more and more, I'm going to use the S word here, which is a problem for some people. More and more, the Scott self learns to surrender, there's the word, to surrender to what's being revealed from within. Now, do you see the ego has no interest in surrendering? What? No, I'm the captain of my own ship. Yeah, that's gone really well. Little by little, we begin to discover there is an inner presence. And at first, it feels like something separate from me, because I'm so identified as a separate Scott self. And I can either wrestle against it, or I can learn to conform with it. Happily, I grew up in a family where conforming to that divine presence was put in a positive light. But even that only took me so far. Surrender actually is giving up the idea that I'm separate and alone and on my own. Surrender is giving up the idea that the separate Scott self is an entity, a standalone entity, rather than an expression of a larger consciousness that one can actually begin to discover to be their true self. As the more one discovers that, the less one feels like a puppet.
Is it that you get to realize that you're the puppet master?
Pardon me?
You get to realize that you're the puppet master?
Yes, you get to realize that you're the puppet master. It sounds like a horror movie. Is there a horror movie like that? So we're not going to put it in that light. But yes, the puppet master. When I sometimes I didn't bring it. Usually have it in my. I'll bring it next week. My wife thinks it's a kind of a funny thing. It's a little kid's glove, and on every finger there is a different farm animal. There's a pig and a goat and a cow and a lamb, and I don't know, maybe a chicken. I don't know what. Right? Pardon me?
The farmer's on the thumb.
Is the farmer on the thumb? Okay, thank you. Spoken as a mom. So then I can do like this, and it looks like the cow is moving, and I can do like this, and it looks like, I can't keep both of those. Anyway, and these can interact with each other and so forth, and they look, to the outside eye, they look like they're individuals, playing out their individual lives. But if you look underneath the cloth, you find fingers on the same hand. And it's the fingers that are actually causing the movements and doing the thing. It's not these things themselves. These finger puppets don't have a life apart from the hand. This body-mind doesn't have a life apart from that internal consciousness. When the consciousness leaves, this body is called a corpse. It's not doing anything but decomposing. But we have become so identified with the physical form that we don't look for the consciousness within. I've identified as the glove, so much so that we don't look for the hand. And look for the hand so intensely that we come to understand the hand is what I am. Just like in the dream, if the character in the dream found out that to discover the dreamer would be incredibly liberating, they might go looking for the dreamer on a mountaintop or in a temple, or they would go looking for it. And these two wonderful mystics, one was a Christian mystic, St. Francis of Assisi, and the other was a Sufi mystic, Rumi, have this to say to that character who thinks that they have to go looking outside of themselves. Simple quotes. St. Francis of Assisi said, "What you're looking for is what's looking." What you're looking for is what's looking. Rumi, same thing. Rumi says, and he, the divine friend, is with you in your search. And when you seek him, look for him in your looking. Closer to you than yourself to yourself. Now again, the dream illustration is very helpful for me to understand that idea, closer to you than yourself to yourself. Right? It's your very essence. It's what makes you up. You are the consciousness of the dreamer. And the dreamer is experiencing the dream through your eyes, through your senses, through your experience. The dreamer is experiencing the dream through the dream character. Can you see that? So we don't look for the divine dreamer in something outside of ourselves. It's all pervasive. It is the very space that exists between these forms. It is the unique and diverse expression that make you who you are. Even the qualities you don't like about yourself are still expressions of the one dreamer, because where else would they come from?